You are live.
This is Senate Transportation. We are Friday the 16th of 2020, and we are about to hear from Scott Cummings, the Assistant Commissioner for Finance in Virginia Motor Vehicles Department. And Scott, we a little slow start for some of us. We have a couple of committee members that will be joining us very shortly that are at other meetings. And I'm going to have the committee members, the other two, introduce themselves. My name's Rich Westman. I'm from North Central Vermont, a county called Lamoille. And I'm chair of the Senate Transportation Committee here.
Morning, Scott. Thanks for being here with us. I'm Wendy Harrison. I'm in Windham County, which is the southeast corner of the state.
And I'm Pat Brennan. I represent Grand Isle County, which is goes right up to the border, Canadian border.
And we have been, our committee has been taking testimony from the states that are in the forefront on this. We heard from Hawaii last week, and they invited us to come and visit. And they did that in the middle of a snowstorm for us. And then we've had Utah and Oregon, and you're the fourth of the four that and so did he have handouts maybe?
Yeah.
You have.
And we have your information, and we can either look along or we can you can post it. And why don't you tell us about yourself, and then we'll go into this.
Thank you, Chair Westman, committee members, for the opportunity to come and speak with you today. Virginia, when we launched our mileage-based user fee program in 2020, we stole a lot from Oregon and Utah, who had programs at the time. So it's only fair that we pay it forward and come speak to the other states who are looking at doing something similar now. So is it easier, Chair, to share the presentation, or would you rather just see my face as I speak? I can do whichever.
Whatever you choose, I think will work for us. If you want to share, I think the other people that are in the room here with us, we have a couple of staff people here, and we have some people looking online. It might be better if you shared, but I think we're open to either.
All right, well, I will certainly share then. That's a good. All right. Okay, so thank you again for the opportunity to be here this morning. Virginia has been using taxes on motor fuels to fund transportation for over 100 years now. And in that time, we've diversified our transportation funding sources a good deal. We've expanded to the retail sales tax, recordation fees, taxes on insurance premiums, registration fees, but about 25% of our transportation budget still relies on fuels taxes. And in 2018, Virginia received notice of how shaky a reliance on fuels taxes is going forward into the future. 2018 marked the first year that vehicle miles traveled in the state increased, but the revenue from fuels taxes decreased when compared to the prior year. That scenario had never happened before. Both of those indicators had fallen in times of economic recession, but typically when vehicle miles traveled increased, then the revenue from the taxes on the fuel used to travel those miles also increased. And the fact that that didn't happen meant that that issue that had been looming on the horizon of increased fuel efficiency in vehicles had finally arrived in the Commonwealth of Virginia. And in response, Virginia's legislature directed the state Secretary of Transportation to convene a working group to study the sustainability of our transportation funding structure, and the impact of the increasing fuel economy in vehicles. So that working group met and looked at a lot of data, and they confirmed that the trend of rising vehicle miles traveled increasing and fuels tax revenue decreasing was a trend that was here to stay in the future. The report determined that it was in part due to electric vehicles that everybody thought would be the culprit, but they also found that rising fuel economies in traditional internal combustion engine vehicles was a major contributing factor to the decline in the revenue. They cited some reports that showed that not only was fuel economy increasing, but it was just going to accelerate moving forward into the future. And that trend is played out by a pretty simple analysis. If you look at a motorist who replaces a 10-year-old sedan that was probably getting a fuel economy in the mid-20s, 20 miles per gallon, the new vehicle is probably going to get something in the mid 30 mile per gallon range. Their driving habits aren't going to change. They're going to add the same amount of wear and tear and congestion to the transportation network, but their contribution in fuels taxes to mitigate that impact is going to fall. This table on this slide was pulled from the study report that was released as part of the working group. The consultants that were helping the working group identified what the vehicle miles traveled should be providing for transportation revenues from the number of gallons used by vehicles. And you can see the small box, 25.6 million. That's the impact from EVs by 2030. Virginia's EV registration numbers have been increasing exponentially, but it's a very small starting point. So even though it's increasing 20, 30, 40%, it's still in 2030 was going to measure about 100 or 250,000 vehicles. The big impact, I'm sorry.
Let me just ask, on your chart, is the 234 also include the 25, and is fuel is the internal combustion engines, or is it what's the red box next to it, the 234.4? That
is the impact from fuel efficiency in traditional internal combustion engines, about a 10%, a factor of 10 increase compared to the impact from EVs. The overall fuel usage was expected to drop by about 250 million gallons by 2030. Part of that, a small part of that was from EVs, and a much larger portion was from increasing fuel efficiency in standard internal combustion engine vehicles. So this chart is, I'm just trying to understand it. So this chart projects out to 2030, and the starting point of the 681.2, is that a starting point of today? Yeah, 2018, but yeah, that was the starting point from when the study was being conducted. They made an adjustment based on population projections and so forth that by 2030, the gallons should be providing 753. Let's see here. I think this is gallons, but we should be seeing 750 million gallons being used, and that's going to fall significantly. So just so I'm clear of the chart, the revenue at the start is at 2018 is 681 million, and what we need to subtract from that is the 25.6, and then we subtract 234.4, and that's the drop off. So the 25 is electric vehicles, but the 234 is internal combustion engines themselves. Correct. Yes, sir.
Excellent. That actually, I haven't seen this chart from any of the states. It's very interesting to be able to quantify in the whole piece, because we, as you get the view is it's electric cars only, and this really tells a picture of it's across the board.
Yes, sir. That is what the working group found. The EVs were sort of the culprit that was quickly identified as this, but when they dug into it, they learned that while in the very long term, 20 years or so, EVs were going to be a big issue. The problem that we were facing now when we're looking at 2018 revenues compared to 2017, that wasn't from EVs, that's from internal combustion engine vehicles.
This is very helpful. Thank you.
And I can provide a copy of the 2018 study report to Megan if you like.
That would be great if we could get that that report and be able to reference that report.
Absolutely. So the working group recommended a number of near-term, mid-term, long-term solutions to address the issue. As we were just discussing, they found that adopting a solution that just targeted EVs or maybe EVs and hybrids alone would not address the issue that we were seeing. And so we needed a number of long-term and near-term solutions. The study recommended in the near term increasing the fuels tax rate and indexing it to inflation to stop erosion from market forces and other inflation factors. And then they recommended long term, we just need to stop trying to rely on the gas tax altogether and move to a mileage-based user fee. The working group recognized that moving away from fuels taxes was a big lift, and so they recommended a midterm strategy that we gain some mileage-based user fee experience through an approach where we would collect another near-term solution, a highway use fee, on a per mile basis. The highway use fee was aimed at those increasing efficiency vehicles. I'll go into more detail, but they recommended that those efficient vehicles should be paying an additional fee to recognize the efficiency that is saving them from fuels taxes at the pump. And so as a midterm solution, we could gain some vital experience collecting a fee on a per mile basis while still relying on the fuels tax for the main portion of our revenue. That study came out in December of 2019, and Virginia's General Assembly met in January of 2020, right on the tail of the report being released, and they adopted many of the recommendations that were contained in the report. Senate Bill 890 and House Bill 1414 were companion pieces of legislation, and they had a number of transportation provisions. Among those, the bills increased the gas tax by 5 cents a year for 2 years, so 10 cents altogether, and they indexed it to the consumer price index moving forward. Every year on July 1st, we look at the inflation from the previous calendar year and increase the gas tax by that percentage. The bill also established the highway use fee that was referenced in the study report. It looks at what the average vehicle pays in fuels taxes and then looks at fuel efficient vehicles, which the bill defines as all vehicles that get a fuel economy of 25 miles per gallon or greater. And then through a calculation, it determines what the efficient vehicle, how much less the efficient vehicle is paying than the average vehicle, and assesses a fee at the time of the vehicle's registration to make up the difference. The bill provided two ways that could be paid: at the time of registration, or through this testing program that we were setting up, an optional way that motorists could pay that highway use fee on a per mile basis. The highway use fee became effective immediately on July 1st, 2020, and then the legislature gave us 2 years to research and identify the optional MBUF program and have that set up by July 1st of 2022. So this is a chart showing Virginia's gas tax rate over since its history in 1923. You can see there had been increases over time, a few pennies here or there that would then be the rate for a number of years until inflation or other construction cost forces caused it to be increased again. And then you can see the impact from 2021 when we had those two nickel increases and then the inflation adjustment every year thereafter.
So, your gas tax, is it a flat per penny per gallon? Is it a wholesale tax? Is it a combination?
The tax that the highway use fee is tied to is a flat per gallon fee. It had been 16.2 cents. That's when the two 5-cent increases applied to it. So it went up to 26.2 cents. And then inflation is put onto that, and it's 32 cents and change now.
Okay.
And you can see the impact of the increases in the rate on the table at the bottom of this slide. You can see that the dwindling year to year, the decreases compared to 2019 to 2020, and then as we started putting the increases in place, it has stopped the losses that we were seeing from the fuels taxes, the inflation, and those two initial increases. We're still seeing erosions, if you will, from fuel economy in the fuels taxes, but the rate increases are mitigating that.
It's interesting because you can see the drop off going out further.
Just a question.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yeah.
So, this seems like a very logical and fair thing to do, but it's generally not popular. Did you do a lot of outreach to the public before the tax was increased?
No, Virginia was, I think, rather perhaps fortunate or what the report came out, and that was the momentum that the legislature needed, with support from the governor's office at the time, and the legislation came out, was proposed, adopted, and put into effect. Between the December release of the report and the passage of the legislation the following spring.
That's great. So then maybe just a follow-up. Did the working group include businesses, perhaps?
Yes, it was a wide range of stakeholders, from large users of fuel, suppliers, distributors. The motor vehicle dealer industry was involved. Lots of government agencies, some think tank policy types. It was a wide range of groups that were contributing to the findings of the stakeholder group.
Okay, so that makes sense that you would have that support because you had it from the beginning because they were part of the process. That's terrific. Thank you.
So this table shows the revenue from the highway use fee. As I mentioned, it's a formula. The code sets out the formula that we use. It sets the average vehicle. The consultants that doing the stakeholder working group study identified that the average fuel economy for the fleet of registered vehicles in Virginia was 23.7 miles per gallon. And they also found that the average number of miles that a Virginia driver uses is 11,600. So that becomes the basis of the formula. A 23.7 mile per gallon vehicle driving 11,600 miles uses 489 gallons of gas. It then applies the gas tax that's in effect at that time. As I said, it increases every July 1st. So then the formula knows how much the average vehicle pays in fuels taxes. Every fuel efficient vehicle, every 25 mile per gallon vehicle and up, is assessed through that same formula and calculated the difference that they're not paying. And the highway use fee is 85% of that difference. So at the very bottom of the range, a 25 mile per gallon vehicle is paying almost $150 in fuel taxes, and so the 85% difference is $6.86. At the other end of the spectrum, an EV, which pays no fuel taxes at the pump, is assessed 85% of the full 155 amount, and so that is $131.88. So while the fuels tax increases every July 1, the highway use fee minimums and maximums also are indexed to inflation and adjust every July 1st. So the
So-
increase, yes, sir.
Oh, you finish and then I'll butt in.
So the increase that you see in the revenue between FY21 and what we're expecting in FY26, that's a mix of an increasing rate as well as an increase in the number of vehicles that are classified as fuel efficient. A lot of new vehicles sold every year now fall in the 25 mile per gallon and up category. So that's a blend of increasing number of vehicles that are assessed the fee as well as the increase in the rate. And the diagram or the visual on the right just kind of shows, the electric vehicle is paying all highway use fee, the average vehicle is paying all gasoline, and all those fuel efficient vehicles are paying some mix depending on how fuel efficient they are.
Is there a report that talks about the basis of how you came up with how did you end up at 85%? How did they end up at picking fuel efficient 25 miles per gallon instead of say 30? Is there any background material to help with how you came up with the numbers in the formula?
I don't have any background information. I'm not sure, the study just has it at this level. I believe they determine if 23.7 is the average, then everything above that is efficient. They rounded it to 25 a little bit, just because that's a nice clean number.
Is this in the report that was done?
This is part of the report. I'm not sure how detailed they go behind the scenes of the highway use fee, but it does talk about how a fee like that on efficient vehicles is what is necessary.
Okay, and that's helpful. And when we get the report, we'll go through the report, and you might get a couple of emails from Megan or one of us asking some more detailed questions as we go through that. So
Certainly.
but this is helpful. Thank you.
So you can see by that middle example vehicle in the visualization, the amount of the highway use fee varies depending on the fuel efficiency of the vehicle, but it always assumes that every vehicle drives 11,600 miles. There's no consideration for a vehicle that's only driven on the weekends by somebody who uses mass transit every day or something like that. So that's where the legislation proposes the mileage-based user fee option for people who feel that they are going to drive significantly less than 11,600 miles. So the mileage-based user fee option, which we call Mileage Choice, is the program that allows motorists to pay their highway use fee on a per mile basis. Virginia contracts with Amovis to act as our commercial account manager. We initially signed the contract with Amovis in December of 2021, and the program went live as legislatively directed on July 1st of 2022. There's a process that customers have to use. Since the highway use fee is paid at the time of the registration, customers need to choose to enroll in Mileage Choice at vamileagechoice.com before the registration period expires. Amovis has an interface into our system. When the customer puts in their information, Amovis can interface with DMV system and identify the vehicle and get returned the highway use fee amount as well as the per mile amount that needs to be charged. And then when the enrollment is complete, Emovis comes back into DMV system and turns on an indicator showing us that the customer is participating in mileage choice, so that when the customer subsequently registers their vehicle or renews their registration, we don't charge them the highway use fee since they're going to pay that on a per mile basis through Emovis. DMV is also partnered with the Eastern Transportation Coalition on a number of grant-funded and projects. We did a lot of ad campaigns, but right before the program was rolling out, going live in 2022, there were a lot of news stories in 2020 when the bill was being passed about the new highway use fee and the upcoming mileage-based option. But in those 2 years, that media coverage had kind of died out, and we really needed to generate some buzz to get the word out again. And so ETC was great for helping us leverage the connections to the media campaign resources that they had, and I will talk a little bit more about our efforts.
So, how would we, Emovis, what's their system like, and what's the structure of their system? What do they do?
So, Emovis, it's a turnkey solution that Virginia contracted with. So when a customer goes to vamileagechoice.com, they're actually on Emovis's site. It's it looks like a DMV site, but it's really the customers interacting with Emovis. So they provide the enrollment process for the customer. Customers can choose whether they're going to participate with their vehicle's telematics software system, or if they're going to use a plug-in device. If they choose the plug-in device, Emovis ships them that device to plug into their car. Or Emovis uses their software tools to connect with the vehicle itself. Emovis's system uses those two avenues to collect all the mileage information, and then they determine the monthly invoice amounts. There's a prepaid account, much like EasyPass, that customers are debited every month, and then it auto renews against their credit card when the balance gets low enough. Emovis sends the customers the invoices and shows them how much is being deducted, and then they transfer that revenue to Virginia. Emovis also runs a customer contact center. So if there are questions about the devices or participation or anything like that, Emovis handles that. Virginia has very little interaction day to day with the customers, so our staffing impact is very low, and Emovis handles all of the customer processing.
We probably would like to talk to somebody if you had any contacts there that might be good for us to get more details about what they do.
Yes, I can provide our main contact, and then I'm sure he can give you over to the sales folks who can answer all of your questions.
I think that would be great if you could do that for us.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
When customers enroll, they can choose a GPS or non-GPS. They can either turn it off in their telematics if they want, or the device, the actual plug-in device that is sent, is determined at the factory. There's a way that they can make it GPS enabled or to turn that off. Virginia doesn't require GPS information for participation. There's no financial benefit to the customers. Unlike Oregon, we don't discount out-of-state miles or miles traveled on private roads. So the non-GPS system, just counting the miles is all we need to determine how the distance that the motorists travel. But the GPS enabled option does provide some additional features on the smartphone app that's required as part of the enrollment process. There's some trip statistics and Find My Car and some other things that customers find valuable. So they do, it's about 60-40, 60% turn on the GPS and 40% don't. But that's one of the options that we made available just to increase participation for those who don't want their mileage continually tracked by the location. This chart shows the enrollment from the very beginning of the program to now. There are about 7 million registered vehicles in Virginia. About 2 million of them meet the definition of a fuel efficient vehicle and pay the highway use fee. So at roughly 25,000 participants, we have about 1% of the eligible population participating in mileage choice. 3/4 of them use that plug-in device that Amovis will ship, and 1/4 of them use the software system that's already in their vehicle. You can see the ramp up from when we first launched. The program was very successful. We were anticipating we'd have enrollment levels that kind of matched what Utah had experienced the year before. Utah's program at the time was only electric vehicles and hybrids, while we had all the other fuel efficient vehicles. But the thought was we'd have relatively low participation from vehicles at that low end of the fee amount, just because the burden of enrolling in the program and participating to save a few dollars, we didn't think that would attract many customers. And what we have found is that customers participating in the program, it's a wide range of the fuel economy. We have a lot of participants who have internal combustion engine vehicles at the 25, 26, 27 mile per gallon rate, who are participating in the program, even though they're not saving a whole lot of money. They are interested in paying only, their fair share, only what they want, or what they should be paying based on their mileage. A lot of them like the technology and want to participate in something new. Those who have enrolled in the program do like it. We're seeing 80% renewing for a second year. As almost 3/4 are still participating from 2 years later. So it's a very popular program. Most of the participants are saving money. The highway use fee is the cap for what they're pay. So if they do enroll in the program and find that they travel more than 11,600 miles, they won't pay any more. It'll stop at whatever they would have paid if they just paid the highway use fee at the time of registration. So it's a low risk program for those that can only save money if they drive less. So they like it and they continue to renew. On average, participants record about 6.5 million miles every month and pay about $100,000 in fees. The program costs about $200,000 a month to operate, so it is not a revenue neutral process. We have been leveraging a federal STSFA grant that we were awarded a $3.3 million grant a couple of years ago to offset the cost of operating the program. That's helped us be revenue neutral as we've experienced or learned from this program and experienced the findings that we're having. Since the beginning of the program, we've collected about $2 million in fees for over 200 million miles traveled. So it's showing us that it's a viable option. The plug-in device, the telematics, it works. It also is showing us that it's a relatively expensive way to collect revenue. And it's bouncing that against fuels taxes, which cost about 1% to 2% for collection costs. I'm not sure that it is a sustainable approach. We're very interested in looking at what Utah is doing with the odometer capture quarterly and seeing if that is a viable option for collecting fuels tax or collecting odometer information to assess a mileage-based user fee. But we continue to operate this program and learn more so that we can share it as we work in Virginia to address the need to replace fuels taxes and to share it across the country with states like Vermont.
How long is your contract with Amovis?
We initially signed a 3-year contract, and last summer we extended it for an additional 3 years. We were able to negotiate some rate reductions. Amovis hadn't had a program quite as large as ours, so as we went through the program and saw how many customers were renewing their participation, which lowers the cost for the acquisition of that plug-in device. That's one of the main cost drivers. The OBD2 devices that we use for 3/4 of our participants, it costs about $75 for each plug-in device. So as participants stay in the program for 2, 3, 4 years, the acquisition costs, is amortized over a longer period of time. Initially, Movis was trying to recover all that cost in the first year because they didn't know how many customers would stick around. So we were able to negotiate some cost savings, but it is still a relatively expensive endeavor.
Well, we're quite grateful that you went in front of us. But we're hoping the costs come down over time before we're forced to move in this area. Senator Brennan.
I was just going to ask the question I asked the other day. I think it was you, Todd. Does the state bear the cost of the Movis unit, or does the consumer?
The state does. There's no cost to the consumer to participate in the program. And we look at it as a learning tool. It's a permanent program in our system. It's a statute. But it is definitely a pilot we're learning. The highway use fee is what has sort of resolved the issue of the fuel economy in those fuel efficient vehicles. And so when you look at the cost of $2 million to explore mileage-based user fee, and the fee coming in is nearing $100 million, it's a relatively minor cost to continue to explore. One of the complaints that we hear about the highway use fee is that it is a significant amount to pay upfront at time of registration, and that amount's only going to increase as the price of fuel goes up, the number of fuel efficient vehicles. We're going to have more consumers who are looking at paying $130, $140 upfront at the time of registration. Virginia's registration fee is only $30.75 for a standard vehicle, so it is quite a jump to go from $30 to add $130 on top of that. So looking at how we can collect more on a per mile basis and lower the one-time impact to consumers is something we continue to want to explore.
So just again, so it's $30 for your regular registration fee.
Mm-hmm.
And then the extra fee on top is $130.
For an electric vehicle, it ranges from the $6.86 at the 25 mile per gallon level all the way up. So every fuel efficient vehicle, 26 miles, 27 miles, 35 miles, they each have a unique fee based on that formula that runs through that compares that fuel economy level to the average.
The 85% equates to 130. So at the time of registration for these, the total would be around 160.
For an electric vehicle, right?
Yeah. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and my apologies, Mr. Cummings. I came in delayed to your presentation, so you may have already answered this question. So with the, I think this must be the Movis, the little cube. That is, you have to have a smartphone to do that. For the
to participate in the program, the smartphone is used. There's an odometer capture photograph that's uploaded into the app that Movis has. And then we do quarterly captures to true up and ensure that all the miles were captured through the plug-in device.
Okay.
So that is a limiting factor for blanket participation across the state is we do need to have a smartphone for participation.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, that in Vermont, I would say, well, we have maybe a high rate of adoption of the smartphone. There's enough people who don't, that I think we would lose out on a few people. So I appreciate that. And then I just had another question related to the chart that you provided on page 11. I'm just really not understanding what the chart means. And I apologize if you could, is it each blue dot represents a number of participants?
Yeah, across the bottom, that represents the fuel economy. So going from the 25 mile per gallon through into the range that hybrids have and all the way up to an EV. And then the number of vehicles participating in our program is the other axis. And so you can see it at the very first dot all the way on the left. About, let's call it 700 vehicles. Those are participating in 25 mile per gallon vehicles. So those are motorists that pay $6.86 as part of their highway use fee, yet they've enrolled in a program that allows them to pay that on a per mile basis. When we were first putting this program together, we thought we'd only really have participation from hybrid and EV owners because they would be the ones who could save $20, $30, and that would sort of be worth the effort of enrolling in the program and plugging the device in and going through all the hoops. But we're finding we have participation from folks at all fuel economy levels, even those who could only really save, less than $10. They're still willing to participate in the program.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I just was like, what does this mean? But when you, just so I understand, are there vehicles that are plug-in hybrids being broken out between hybrids? Like how do you break that out?
We use the EPA's fuel economy for a vehicle. That was a lesson learned when we first implemented this program. DMV doesn't traditionally keep fuel economy as one of the data points for registration, and we know make, model, vehicle of the vehicle. We know the year it was made and maybe the color, but fuel economy wasn't. So we had to implement a VIN lookup tool to capture the fuel economy there. That is the 16-digit VIN does have the manufacturer's fuel economy for a vehicle embedded in that sequence of numbers and characters. So for every vehicle, we could pull what its fuel economy was. And for all those who are 25 miles per gallon and up, we put into our system that they're assessed the highway use fee. So it doesn't matter what type of vehicle it is, whether it is a really fuel efficient internal combustion engine vehicle or a low fuel efficient hybrid, Hummer or something, as whatever the fuel economy is, that's what we use. So that range down at the bottom was just showing whatever the fuel economy of the vehicle is, and how many are participating across that spectrum.
Okay, okay, that makes more sense. Well, thank you. That was very helpful.
Wendy?
So general question and a specific question. So just following up on the fuel economy, if a vehicle's fuel economy changes over time, so if it got worse, could they adjust it or would they want to adjust it? I'm not sure. I'm just thinking about people who are really specific about things.
That is, one of the criticisms we've heard over time. People they can calculate, they can write down the odometer, when they fill up at the pump, and they know they put 10 gallons in there, and they can do the math, and they can say, hey, I'm not capturing what the EPA says I should be, or over time vehicles become less efficient. Our system does not allow for any modifications. It's whatever the manufacturer's original fuel economy was for a particular vehicle. That's what we use for the life of the registration.
Yeah, and that makes sense because it would be too complicated. And so at one point you said the cost of the system, and I think it was $200,000 a month. Was that accurate?
Right.
Okay.
Right. We pay $86,000 for system maintenance, and then there is a per vehicle fee that we pay. It's $5 and change for a plug-in device and $3 and change for the telematics vehicle. So the number of participating vehicles changes, how much we pay every month. But on average, we collect in revenue about half of the cost of the system.
Okay, thank you.
This is very helpful, and but if we can get a contact in Movis, they sound like somebody we should talk to better understand what they do in the in between, and that initial report that you mentioned that really this whole thing off. I think would be very useful for us to have and take a look at. Are there any other questions that members have at this point?
Thank you very much. It's very
Thank
helpful.
you, and you very well might have questions come back from us.
Yeah.
And they'll probably go through Megan, and but this is very helpful. You can tell you kind of leapfrogged over Utah and Oregon.
Yeah.
And
Yes, yeah.
yeah,
Well,
there's a lot of the same stuff, but it's very good. Are there any other things that you'd like to say that you think as we look further into this that we should be interested or aware of?
Well, Chair, I think you mentioned that you were speaking to Utah because they have, pivoted from their approach of the plug-in device and telematics and are using the odometer capture. When we first were looking at in 2020, the whole mileage-based user fee process kind of caught us off guard. We weren't expecting. We had to. Sorry, the glare is really getting me here. We had to really change or we had to really start researching mileage-based user fee and what all that meant. And so, Utah and Oregon's program were a great launching pad for us, and we copied a lot of what Utah had done in their RFP when they were soliciting commercial account managers. And since then, they've kind of gone away from that model and are doing something different. And so I encourage you to kind of continue to look at what other approaches there are out there. When we had that July 1st, 2022 legislative directive to have our program up and running. So we focused on the tried and true approaches that had proven that they were viable solutions, and that was the plug-in device and telematics at the time. But there may be some other options, still out there. The federal pilot is still kind of being considered, and so as new technology gets out there, this one certainly works, and it can work every single day, but it is relatively expensive, and so what other solutions there could be helpful.
So, we'll say to you, Utah told us that the odometer piece where they take the picture of the mileage on the odometer, they expected that to be used more because it was the system cost less for the driver. But they said they've been running about equal people using the odometer versus a device in the vehicle, even though the device is more expensive. 50% of their drivers that are participating chose the device. So so I thought that was quite interesting in that piece. But we certainly will follow up with both states as we think about this more.
Great.
Thank you, Scott, so much. We're very appreciative of you being willing to talk to us.
My pleasure, and I'll answer any other questions that come up. Just let us know how we can help.
All right. Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much.
Thank you.
So at this point, we're a little early. Would you like to give us your we're going to change gears and talk about trucks.
Fun intended.
Split shift that 10 speed. There you go. There you go. I can't drive one, so don't worry about
Yeah,
it.
a truck or it doesn't. You can drive a truck.
No, I'm not allowed. I said, I ride shotgun, as we used to say. Which is
I know.
so you should do it.
So
Yeah.
I know that there has been a little bit of a rocky time getting it started in this. So why don't you start with, well, what's gone on, how we got here, and I think the problem has begun to rectify itself.
Right.
So, but why don't you give a picture so people.
Okay, so Bill Smith, Vermont Truck and Bus Association, and Vermont Retail Lumber Dealers Association. These are your local trucking and companies, bus companies, and building supply stores. So for several years now, DMV has been working on their online permitting for the various permits that they issue, right? And one that has always been kind of the tough one is what they call the single trip overweight permit. So think about, this would be someone who's hauling an excavator to a job site, or a crane to a construction zone, or maybe one of the big manufactured housing pieces going down the highway. So they all need to get an overweight, it might be overdimension permit as well as part of that. So the DMV can make sure they're routing safely for their load. And I'm not talking, there are loads above what I'm talking about. They're called super loads or engineered loads. That's where you actually have an engineer sit down and say, okay, this thing is so heavy, so long, so wide, we need to really specify exactly where and how and when it's going to get from point A to point B. We're not talking about that. That hasn't changed at all. And those are very complicated. But what we're talking about is your typical company, like a crane operator or someone moving a piece of heavy equipment to a job site, and they have to get a permit from DMV to do that, to make sure they're going over the right roads. Like, you don't send someone down a dirt road. You don't, maybe there's a construction zone that is temporary. You can't fit through it. Literally, this is more comes down to not fitting through something.
What's the point?
Right. So it's DMV's way of making sure that we don't have create bigger problems by trying to do business. And for a long, long time, that's been done on paper through the Department of Motor Vehicles. And about, I want to say 6 or 7 years ago, Commissioner Vanoli and a bunch of other folks said, we got to do this better. Other states are doing it. New Hampshire does it. New York does it. Every state around us kind of does this. And in those states, many of my members go across state lines. They're in interstate commerce, and they get a permit in New Hampshire, and they run through Vermont to New York State. And they could always, in that 6 years ago, you get your permit from New Hampshire and your permit from New York State, you click it online and you're good to go, and they give you your route. And then you go look at Vermont and they're like, oh, that'll be 4 days, 5 days before we get back to you. The concern is that this economy that we're working in, that needs to move a crane somewhere, has to do it in a very tight window of time. So, and if they can't get their permit and get it rolling here, they'll take it somewhere else and do it, and they'll move somewhere else. And that person that was wanted to pay them to do the work can't get the work done. So that Vermont homeowner, that Vermont company can't get the job done that they need to do. So that's sort of a long-winded way of saying that's where we were. And DMV has been working on this for several years now. And they're working with a company called ProMiles that also does the same permitting for Maine and New Hampshire. And this past fall, they stood up the program. That's one of those terms with all the technical. We stood up our programs, and now we're going to test it out there and see what we can do. And I spoke to Commissioner Collier yesterday. He was going to have somebody in here double checking me, but I guess they're not there yet. Or maybe after a conversation, he said we don't need to. Bill's on board. We're not off the reservation anymore, whatever they want to call it. The reason I came to you guys, or we talked about this initially, was when in late November, early summer, the program rolled out, and people were in the city going, "Yeah, I get my permit, awesome!" And they weren't getting the permit, and it was slower, than they thought it was going to be. So there was not a lot, but there was some
angst
saying, "What the heck?" Right? And I can't get my permit. You told me I could get it in the fast way, and I need it today. Yes.
I think, Mr. Chair, just to drill down on that,
Yep.
do you have numbers of how many people that the trucking companies it's affected, and the length of delay or the denial? Like if there was an increased percentage of denial?
The great thing here is we don't need that to drill down, because.
Oh, I like that.
Yes.
No,
Yeah. That's
this
what
is
that
just
laid
the
the table of
flag.
the anxiety and the waiting. Everyone's been waiting for this in the trucking industry for some time. And so when it came out, they were like, yes. And it was like, for a couple of weeks, they had some hiccups. Some people were getting permits quickly.
Well,
Some were
basically say
taking-
it came out in November. In November and December, was a little bit of a rocky start,
Yes,
but
yes.
now they seem to have got their feet in under.
And I'm gonna, so, right, so now you can get a permit between instant and 30 minutes.
Wow.
Great.
Whew. I give full credit to the folks at DMV and the technical people that worked on this, and Full Miles, the company that worked with the Vermont, government to make this happen. Again, we're talking about the single trip overweight, over dimension permits are kind of like, that's like the meat and potatoes of this stuff. That's your average company moving something that's a little bigger than you should have being hauled down the road. It's is it more than 8 feet? Is it more than 8 feet wide? We got to look at it, right? That kind of thing. If it's more than, the 80,000 pounds or whatever your weight is for what you're hauling, they need to know. And for good reason, we don't want people out there trashing our roads and getting into accidents when, because a great big truck coming at you, you weren't expecting. So that's again, I'm sorry, Chair, that's not trying to be quick here with it, but
No, that's
There's some other-
perfectly fine.
There's
Basically,
nuances
what
to
this
these
is
things.
gonna-
Yeah.
If you get somebody that applied in November or December and they didn't have a good experience,
there were several years of pent up anxiety, anticipation that if somebody had an experience that didn't work out right, they went ballistic.
Oh, okay, yeah.
So what
it got the bugs out.
yes, so you may have heard of it from other senators that have constituents that had issues with this. I have looked into those specifically over the last week. I have reached out to several of our board members of the Vermont Truck and Bus Association. Do this every day. This is what they do. But we have also set up some meetings with our members that we're putting out, we're going to discuss this today. February 9th, we're going to do a Zoom meeting with our members. If anyone's got any issues with this system, we're going to walk them through it.
Oh, great.
Okay, it's Jeff Newton from Barrett Trucking. Barrett Trucking hauls a lot of heavy stuff for a lot of places in the state of Vermont, and thank you for doing it. But Jeff has agreed to take some of his time and help other companies make sure that they're using the system in a way that is quick and efficient for everybody. So, it's working.
And if you have anybody that approaches you,
Yes.
said this,
Send them to me. Give me their number. I will call them. I will make sure they're connected with Jeff, not just in that Zoom meeting, but he's willing to call people back up and say, all right, show me what you're doing. Because everyone can see in the system how long it takes to get a permit. You can literally go into the DMV's, if you're in the system with your credentials, you can go in and say, oh, someone's going through on that road. And why? Because they need to coordinate everything to make sure you're not running like 9 overweight trucks through the same place in the same 3-hour period. You want to make sure you've got things figured out, and you can look on the system. And I've seen the screenshots of it where they say this company got a permit to go from here to here, and it took 27 minutes. This company got it in 8 minutes. This company, it's minutes. It's not hours. So it's kudos to DMV for getting it rolled out. The longer picture view of this is that the other overweight permits that are out there, this is more of a sticking point that's not figured out yet. We're working on this, is the municipal overweight permits.
Yeah.
Now, this is coming in March. Every town in the state will issue overweight permits. Well, they'll do it almost any time, but March is when you go and get your annual permits from the towns for your overweight. Who does this affect? Everyone who's hauling something that's a truck that's more than 24,000 pounds. So for example, a big UPS truck loaded will be more than that. So I'm not talking huge trucks here. We're talking about, your delivery trucks, your fuel trucks on every road in the state of Vermont going to our homes, bringing your heating fuel and propane. They're hauling out there on the municipalities, and they get permits from every pound they run every year. Typically, it's a $10 fee, and the town wants to know 2 things. Who are you, and do you have insurance? They want to know who's on their roads, and they want to make sure that you're insured if something goes wrong. But that's fine. This program, that the overweight permit electronic program at DMV, has always had designed into it the capability to expand to include online permitting with the municipalities if they will participate. Now, right now, I don't think I'm speaking out of turn for DMV because, their program, they are rolling that out this spring. They're working with some towns to do some pilot programs. to see if it's gonna work and how it could work effectively. Both so the towns know who's on the road and who's got insurance.
So if we have, spring waitlisted roads,
That's a slightly different issue, but
can they get into, is there a hope that they could get into that?
well, that's another type of permit. That let me touch on that one. Yes, I'll talk about that in just a second. So the general town overweight permit. So like if you weigh more than 24,000 pounds, basically any road other than Main Street in most towns is a 24,000 pound road. So your, ice cream delivery truck might be over that, right? Your milk hauler going to your farm is way over that, right? So they all get permits from every town they run in every year. And every town varies. And like, is it a paper permit? Do you have to mail something to me? And then the town road foreman looks at it and says, okay, yeah, you're good. But there's no real criteria. They can't really deny a permit, but you have to get one. When the rubber hits the road, if I may say that, on that is the fines if you're overweight on this road are huge. I've talked to some of you over the years about it. I know that these two former representatives over here have looked at this a lot over the time.
There too.
Well, I mean, I'm talking 10, 15, 20 years ago.
Did you say the eighties?
Yeah.
Back in the 80s. Really.
You were pretty small.
Yeah. So it's always been, it's the fines are thousands of dollars.
Yeah.
If you're running a 65,000 pound dump truck on a road that's 24,000, you're 41,000 overweight. And then there's a calculation in statute done to say how much is your fine, and it's going to be thousands of dollars. So nobody wants to get the fine. Nobody else from any other state even know this exists, by the way. So it's always a problem for out-of-state companies delivering into Vermont. You don't need to get entirely into the weeds on that, because we got to go to the weeds of the mud season in just a second. So the hope is that at least for Vermont companies or companies that frequently pull municipal overweight permits in Vermont, that we could go to the same portal we go to for a state overweight permit and get it, and the towns could get the filing fee, and they could get the insurance information, and they could get which trucking company it is, so that their constables or police officers or the local sheriff that's enforcing there can know if that truck is, you got a permit, and they pull it behind you and go, oh, okay, that truck's fine, and they don't live there. And the town knows who's there. Now, what's going to happen someday is that there will be towns that resist that. There will be towns that still want to go the same old way. Why? I'll say it, because secretly they don't like trucks. They just don't like seeing them, even though they're delivering stuff to their neighbor's, house.
Or
I'm just.
Mr. Chair, I would
Yes,
just
ma'am.
know, I think it's not that people dislike trucks.
Okay.
I think it's that people, especially in like downtown Woodstock, have seen pedestrians get almost run over by large vehicles, have had outsized noise issues, and the use of Jake brakes in their downtowns.
No, those are the reasons why they don't
Yeah,
like
I
trucks,
also
but
think
the end
they
result
see
is they don't like
people
trucks.
Yeah, I think it's
Let's stay away from the blame game.
Okay, I knew I shouldn't have gone. I
But I
apologize.
get what
The first step is
So-
that the hope is that we could incorporate, the next step is if we could incorporate the permit
Right.
communities
Right.
and get a more
Yeah.
coherent system across the board.
My
What
understanding
does bother me in all of this is how, if our system is different than other, with local permits, how is someone that comes from Pennsylvania to make a delivery here, how are they to know?
they don't. I used to make a pretty good living defending them overweight fine cases when they would roll in from Idaho into Williston and turn around at the post office or something. Hey, that's an actual case. So, and their fine was $8,300. Because even more important than the money actually is the time it takes, because in those cases, if you're overweight, they need to have certified scale come out. Someone that's got the training to appropriately weigh a truck, and they need to go and weigh it, and they could be several hours away. And you're,
So first step will be if the more towns that we can get involved in this system and
let's try
the
to
more we can
voluntary.
push DMV to, it will make a more coherent system for everybody across the board.
Right.
And now, is there any hope that waitlisted roads sometime in the future,
The mud season rules, yes.
it might be
Yeah.
incorporated, so
Yes.
in one place you could see what's waitlisted?
Right, well, you can go to the AOT website right now and look up what town is in there. For their mud season rules, your temporary, the classic, the white sign with the red and black letters on it that says, posted from March 1st to, June 1st, this road is, you cannot go over this amount of weight on it. And that's already there. I would say 25 years ago, that was put in place where every towns had wanted to get the fines for those roads and get and effectively enforce overweight on the muddy roads that get harmed. Had to put it on the agency of transportation's website and do that every year. Because it can change. Sometimes towns pave a road, they don't worry about it anymore. Or sometimes towns want to put more roads in it. Every year they have to do that. That's an administrative problem for every town as well. But that's, again, the reason that's different than the sort of general like blanket overweight permits is because it is very specific, and each town has unique road situations where they have to protect the road bed
It's just
by limiting that.
it just happens to follow that sugaring is and SAT is the same time the roads are the muddiest.
Yes, there's no, and loggers trying to get logging jobs done before the muddy roads they drove up on, thaw out is also, the pressure of that is also gonna never go away. But if there's a way at least where everyone can learn what the rules are so they can follow them.
But the next step really is, can we get more coherently local permits across the road incorporated in the system?
At least for those who know they have to go look at them. And that's Vermont is one of 3 states that has very strong municipal government. 47 other states it's county government, state government, and that's almost it. I mean, yes, there are certain,
But the first step is if anybody in this room has anybody that says I applied and it just wasn't working, they seem to, within the last 2 weeks, have got this cleared up.
Well, it says it's a little bit more than that, but yes, certainly since middle of December, DMV has gotten this dialed in a very good way, and I applaud them for that.
Great.
And if you have constituents that I'm here almost every day, come and see me or email me and say, I want you to talk to this company. They're having problems with the system, and we will work it out, whether it's having a contact at DMV, walking through it, or having Newton walking through it to see what they're having problems with, and we'll help.
So at this point, we're going to take a break until 10:30.
Oh.
It did have on the schedule the transportation support study